Good evening, and you're welcome to another episode of the Rugby Show here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breffney Early, and of course, again, this week, once again, our AIL expert, Ciaron Noble, joining us to have a look through all of the action across the league, men's, women's, over the last couple of weeks, and of course, into this weekend. It's a big weekend for the ladies. We're going to be talking to Mairead Holohan in just a couple of moments ahead of Blackrock's home semi-final in the women's AIL this weekend. We'll also be hearing later in the show from Gearoid Prendergast of young Munster after their big win at the weekend, while Ciaron's going to take a run through all of the divisions later on in the show for us, as well as a little chat with our own women's AIL expert, Diarmuid Carney, who'll be dropping in for a look at everything in the initial stages of the league. Ciaron, big weekend last weekend. Where were you? What were you up to? What games were you covering?
I wasn't meant to be doing commentary last week, but my good friend Justin Middleton, his wife, congratulations to them. They had a baby during the night on Friday, so I was called into action late, but I didn't do too bad. Trinity Young Munster, so I was happy with my own performance, which usually I am, and so that was good.
Absolutely, young Munster, of course. We'll hear more about that game later on. You caught up, of course, with Gearoid earlier in the season. But first, before we bring Mairead into the conversation, it's really all about the women this weekend. There is a full round of fixtures, of course, but the women down to the semi-finals, some real mouth-watering ties. Your own thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's happened really quick, hasn't it? It's come around quite quick. And yeah, the semi-finals are this weekend. You've got Blackrock versus UL Bows, then you've got Railway against Belvo. Then you've also got the conference semi-finals we shouldn't forget about either. You've got Wicklow Ballincollig, and then you've got Galwegian Suttonians. So there's lots happening in the women's divisions, and then the finals next week. So yeah, lots happening. The men's season is coming to their midway point, but for the women, the first competition and the first bit of silverware, there's a chance for them to win that by next weekend. So it's really heating up.
Yeah, it's a big weekend as well. So maybe let's bring in Mairead into the conversation. Mairead, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks very much for having me.
It's been an exciting year so far for Blackrock. Beaten last year, obviously, in the final of this competition. But you've topped the group stages. You've topped the initial league. You've got to be happy with how the season's going so far.
Yeah, absolutely delighted. We couldn't be happier. We're unbeaten in the regular season so far, and I mean, from one match to the next, to bring that kind of momentum with us. We've been building and building since September, and like the atmosphere and the attitude, the kind of camaraderie and everything at training every night, like as we're nearing this semi-final here, it's like top notch. It's a really great atmosphere to be in, and it's nice to come into it with that unbeaten confidence as well. Like obviously there's no foregone conclusions or anything, but it's just a really nice position to be in at this stage of the season.
Last season, you got to the final, obviously, against Railway Union, and you just they narrowly edged you on the day, but you beat them a couple of weeks ago, 19-17, so that must give you great confidence.
Yeah, obviously, it's a massive rivalry between ourselves and Railway Union every year, and pipped at the post last year was like extremely disappointing, especially with it being such a close game, so little in it. And like every time we play them, it's like an absolutely attritional battle. Like I'm not sure I've ever been as tired as I was after that Railway game a couple of weeks ago, beating them by 2 points. I mean, it was such a sweet victory to beat them. First time we had a chance to come up against them since that loss in the AIL League last year. So it was really, really great to beat them, especially they were at home, we were away. So they had the home crowd, but we still got some travelling support, and it was really, there's nothing sweeter than beating your biggest rivals on their home ground.
Obviously, you could bring a wealth of experience to the side. You've been involved in the game a long time. How have you seen the involvement of the league over the last couple of seasons in terms of where it's going and the quality of players that are now coming into the league across the board, not just in the top sides?
Yeah, there's a bit of chopping and changing going on with the format. So, last year with the top four conference after Christmas, it worked out great because there was people playing games with great competition across the board. Whereas this year they've gone back to everybody playing everybody else, and there's some really big score lines there. So I'm not sure what it'll be like next year again. As regards the way they did it last year, it really helped the likes of Wicklow come on. Like they had some really competitive games, and now they were like fighting for top four this year. So, I mean, it really did work to help them come on. this year, I'm not sure did it do a disservice to some of the teams who just, were on the receiving end of a load of big scoreline defeats. So I wonder what they'll do for next year. Of course, we have Cup coming up after Christmas, which is a bit of a different format again. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, the top 3 or 4 teams seems are staying the same year on year, but there is a bit of movement below that. So as I said, Wicklow really showing up this year, and the likes of Galwegians are still there and thereabouts, and some of the teams then are having excellent matches. The likes of Ballincollig and Cook and games like that. There's some great competition there, so there still are excellent matches to be watched across the board.
Obviously, it's been a great season for Blackrock, and there's probably been a few standout moments and a few standout players for you this season. Who would you think, or what would you think have been the standout moments?
Yeah, going down to UL Bows, I don't know, when was it? Sometime in October, I think, and coming away with a 50-odd point victory. We went down there confident. We went down there to win. But I mean, we've had some tough games against UL Bows in the past. We've gone down there, we've been beaten, or we've gone down there and battled it out in the freezing cold and the lashings of rain, and come out the wrong side of it. So we went down there confident. We had wins under our belts from the first few games, and we were hoping to win. But we really stamped our authority on the game there, and I feel like it was a bit of a turning point in our season for us. We kind of just realised how good we can be. We had a really flowing game. Running rugby and playing down on their Astro actually suited us, I think. And then we followed it up against Old Belvedere the next day, which I would have to say is the highlight of the season for me personally so far. We had our we were pinned, or I can't remember what that phrase is. Anyway, we were losing and we needed to show some gumption to turn it around and get that back, and we ended up coming out victorious there as well, and even managed to score a try thanks to Mairead Liston for doing all the running for me, which is not really a very normal feature of my matches. I'm normally stuck in the second row doing the donkey work and let the try score into the others, but yeah, it was a fantastic game just to see that we were under pressure. It was a really tight game between us and Belvo. They were worthy opponents, and again we were away to them, so to turn that around and end up victorious that day, that was probably the highlight of the season so far for me.
You won that game by 9 points in the end of October, and I suppose how important is it when you're in those situations that you do have that little bit extra, that you're not giving away losing bonus points to teams that in and around you in the league table? Is that something that you're aware of during a game, or is it something that just kind of you think about maybe after the final whistle's gone?
Yeah, I suppose depending on the game at hand, you might be going in there realising that you really, you have to win. You have to win with a bonus point. You're thinking about the different permutations on the table or whatever. But that game against Belvo was just win at all costs type of game for us, because our aim at the start of the season was to be in the final, to win the final. So we still have one more step to go to get to the final. So we don't want to be thinking too far ahead. Obviously, there was lots of little goals along the way, and the goal against Old Belvedere was to win. Bonus point or not, it was to win that game. So we did that. But I mean, at other stages in the season, you would be really thinking about, can we win with a bonus point here because we're vying for top spot on the table or whatever. We were top of the table at the start of the season, and just the way things worked out with the order in which we played games and stuff, then we moved down the table while we had a game in hand and other teams didn't. So poking our heads back up to the top there a couple of weeks ago felt really satisfying. After our unbeaten streak, to beat Railway Union and top them on the table there, that was another highlight of the season so far, I guess.
I know you're a maths teacher, and you're from Tip as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in rugby.
Yeah, we've a grand Tip contingent on the team, actually. There's myself, Maeve O'Leary, Aoife Moore, and Dorothy Wall. So we're representing. I think only Donegal beats us. Dublin doesn't get a look in. Went to college in UL, actually. So up against UL Bows, there's not a massive amount of rivalry for me because I wasn't into rugby at all at the time, but it still is, a bit of nostalgia there. When I finished college, I went to the Middle East teaching. I was in Abu Dhabi, and it's there that one of the PE teachers in the school I taught in was also the coach for the women's side in Abu Dhabi Harlequins, and he kind of dragged me along. And I was like, look, I have no interest in rugby, don't know the first thing about it. Despite also being a PE teacher, I don't teach it anymore, but that's what I did in college. I just wasn't interested in rugby. And he was like, no, you'll love it. And he was right. One training session, I was hooked. Now, we only ever played sevens out there at the time because there wasn't enough for 15s. So played 2 years of sevens, including going to the Dubai Sevens local competition. I know that's on again this weekend or this week or whatever. Best weekend of the year out in the Middle East. So jealous of all the girls flying out and guys. So when I came home from Abu Dhabi, then I just was like, well, I want to continue playing rugby. So I sought out my local team. I was living in Lucan at the time. So joined Clondalkin. I was there for a couple of years, but was kind of in and around playing a bit of Ireland sevens development and Leinster 15s, and kind of the coaches there were saying to me I just needed to go play AIL. So checked out my options, and Blackrock was the one for me, and luckily they took me on, and I haven't looked back since. So been playing with them for 8 seasons. Ali Coleman and I joined the same time, and Michelle Claffey's the only one that beats us for longevity in the club. So I'm one of the senior members for sure.
How's the body holding up? Because I know as you get more experienced, I use that term, more experienced, you start to feel the effects of those hits a little bit longer. So now it's not just Saturday evening, it's Sunday, it's Monday, it's Tuesday before you can kind of get back to yourself again. How have you been finding that kind of as you've got older in the team?
Yeah, more experience is definitely older in my case, especially since I didn't start till I was like 22 or something. But anyway, yeah. I guess I would have to say that I felt it more last season than I did this season. And at the end of last season, I thought I was done. I was fully retired there for about 4 months before I made a triumphant comeback in September. Because I just was exhausted, as you say. Now, I think getting COVID right in the middle of last season probably didn't help my case, but that was like definitely physical exhaustion really, really got to me last season. But I think I'm fighting fit this year, and we've got a new S&C coach, Craig, into, he's absolutely, Craig Bulger, sorry, I was just trying to think of his surname there. He's absolutely excellent of keeping on top of player welfare, as well as like getting the meters into our legs and everything. He has us GPSed up at training and for matches, and he's watching the meters and he's watching the load. And, he asks us every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, like, how are we feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, etc., the soreness. And I have noticed myself entering a quite low score for how good my body is feeling on some Mondays and Tuesdays. But as I said, the load is managed really well, both the gym and the on-feet stuff, conditioning. So I'm feeling very fit this year, and feel like, there's been previous seasons when I was younger that I wasn't feeling as good. So age is not everything.
I suppose you've got a big 2 weekends coming up. You've got UL Bows on Saturday, and then hopefully you have a final. But do you think this is your year now? You can win the AIL title?
I really do, yeah. I mean, I felt this way last year as well, that it was going to be our year, but feel differently this year. Just things are coming together. We've got a wealth of youth as well as experience on our team now. And I mean, we're gelling really well. The atmosphere is really great. Like, we're just taking momentum from one win to the next. And I do really feel like this is going to be our year. We've been pipped to the post last year, and in the past we've gotten close as well. Like, while I've been there for 8 years, we've been in the final a couple of times. And to just go that one step further, it would just, it would mean the world to not just myself, but like so many other girls on the team. And feeling as good in the camp. Obviously, we've got a semi-final to win this weekend. That's our only priority at this moment. But I mean, if we are to just take a quick peek at the following Friday, like, it's absolutely everything is going to be on the line. Bodies on the line. We're going to leave everything on the pitch if we make it that far. And I mean, it's going to be a tremendous battle. Whatever 2 teams are going to be in that final, it's going to be an amazing game. So I really am hoping it's going to be Blackrock, and it's going to be Blackrock that are victorious at the end. And I feel like it definitely could happen. Like, it's we're definitely confident going into it this year, but we'll see how this weekend goes first.
It's been played on TG Car as well, isn't it? Just next Friday, the final is, yeah. That's
7:30
well.
on Friday the 9th. It'll be on TG Car.
You've already got it in the diary. That's a bit of. I hope you're not disappointed at the weekend. Talk to us about the chances, though, because the actual game itself on Saturday, you've played them already in the season. You had a fairly comfortable victory down there back in October, I think you said. Last year, you played them twice, won one, lost one very narrowly by a point, I think, in the group stages. So it's always a tight enough encounter between yourselves and UL. Do you feel you've actually put that distance between you, that the 50 points reflects the gap, or are you expecting a much tighter game at the weekend?
Yeah, definitely think we're expecting a much tighter game at the weekend. I know they've Nicole Cronin back and maybe some other changes of personnel. So it might be an entirely different ball game on Saturday. And as you said, it's a big rivalry there between us and Bows as well. They've won several AILs in the last 8 seasons that I've been playing with Blackrock. They've always been there and thereabouts. And so anytime we've played them, it's been close. Barring this game in October, that's the first time we've ever put that many points on them. So as you said, it's usually a very close encounter, and we're expecting a very close encounter this Saturday as well. Luckily, since we've finished on top of the group, we get to invite them up to Blackrock, and we love playing in Stradbrook up on our top pitch. It's a great pitch to play on, and we're going to have home support as well. Our men's team have a match against Nina ahead of us, so there's a nice double header down the club. We'll have some home support. We're by no means complacent. We know it's a big match and we have to win it, and it's not going to come easily by any stretch of the imagination. So we're really, really looking forward to it, but not expecting it to be easy at all.
Just on the mention of the men's game, of course, they're playing at the top of Division 2A at the moment. How much of a help is it when the other teams in the club, and particularly the senior teams in the club, are pushing ahead and excelling in a season? Does that rub off on you a little bit as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Saturday evening down in Stradbrook, if we've been playing men's team, women's team, seconds team, thirds team, if any of our teams have been playing, we're in Blackrock, we're in Stradbrook afterwards, even if the matches were elsewhere in Dublin, and we're celebrating together as a club. The camaraderie off the pitch is amazing. The support as well that you get. We get messages in from different members of the board into our WhatsApp group, or messages through our manager Jen to wish us the best of luck, to congratulate us. You'll have people meeting you afterwards saying, oh, I was getting the messages through on the WhatsApp, even though I was watching this game, I was also following your game. And you really get the impression that people in the club are interested in our games, in our success. They're congratulating your victories. They're watching the games and telling you what you did well. And it's across the board. It's every team in the club does it for each other. So as I said, that double header at the weekend, we'll be down before we do our warm up to have a look at the start of the men's game, and they'll be staying on to support us afterwards as well. It's it's not even a question of what they will be there. It's really good to have the support from everyone in the club, players and supporters alike.
Well, I think you probably have them all in support on Saturday evening when you take on UL Bows in that semi-final at the weekend. Listen, Ray, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you. The best luck to your team, you and your team, on Saturday evening. And you never know, we might be chatting to somebody ahead of a potential final next week, all things going well.
Fingers crossed. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem at all. Mairead Holohan there joining us, of course, from Blackrock, and they're in action this weekend in one of two semi-finals in the top section of the league. The top four sides all face off on Saturday evening. The next four sides also in action. Talk to us a bit about the conference, Ciaron, in terms of how that's going to work out as well. All games, I suppose, on Saturday.
Well, it's Cook didn't qualify for it because they finished in last place. So the way it works is 5th play 8th. So in this case, Wicklow against Ballincollig. That'll be in Wicklow, and then it's Galwegians against Etonians. I think that one's in Galway. So yeah, Galwegians finished 6th, so that one is in Galway. Galwegians will fancy themselves going into that one, and the same with Wicklow. They'll fancy their chances against Ballincollig. And then Wicklow, because they finished 5th, they have home advantage again in the final if they win. So the highest ranked team between the two teams in the final will get home advantage. So that'll be at next Saturday at 5 o'clock. So there's a lot on the line for Wicklow this Saturday against Ballincollig. And then you've got 4 very competitive games on this weekend. And I think it's great, that we're seeing a bit of silverware up to Christmas, because, going into the Christmas break with a medal around your neck, it could give you some buzz. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
Let's maybe have a look at who our man on the ground, Diarmuid, thinks is going to be in the reckoning for those medals. Diarmuid, you've been following the Women's the Women's League of Ireland, should I say? League of Ireland, it's not the League of Ireland. That's a different show. It's the Women's AIL. You've been, my mind is getting muddled up. It's a week to do that to you. But in terms of, you've been following the league, obviously, over the last 8 rounds. into this weekend. Are the right 4 teams in the semi-finals?
I do believe so. Definitely the top 3, as Mairead had said, it's pretty much the same top 3 definitely over the last couple of years. It's just a matter of where they were going to be placed, whether Railway were going to finish top or Blackrock were going to finish top. In the end, it was Blackrock who remained unbeaten. UL, to their credit, though, did remarkably well at that end stage of the season to finish 4th. Someone said that Wicklow had a fairly tough run of games, especially those last 2 games where they were played against 2 teams that would finish in the top 4 as well. Whereas UL took on the likes of Cook and who weren't that competitive this year, but the game against Galwegians was very, very competitive down in Anacostia. And UL, they were there last year, they're there this year. I suppose if you ask them, they'd say, look, they deserve to be there. Start of the season, to me, the start of the season, I was thinking it was going to be between Weegians or Wicklow. They were both looking very sharp off the off, but to UL's credit, fair play to them, and they'll want to be competitive this weekend as well.
Yeah, looking at the league table, 6 points separate those 4th and 5th teams. So while maybe the order of the fixtures put a bit of a slant on the league table, that maybe was just a little bit generous to 1 or 2 of the teams. Mairead talked about it earlier in terms of how they dropped off the top purely because they had a game in hand on everybody else, and kind of UL were always kind of that game in hand behind everybody else as well. And once it kind of came to the business end and we started leveling off in terms of games played, they kind of took that 4th spot relatively straightforwardly at it.
They did, I suppose, even in the second to last weekend where Galwegians had the break, they didn't have a game that weekend. That allowed them to sit down after the game and go, right, we are going to take this to the last day. And knowing that their game was before Wicklow's game against Railway, they knew that, right, if we get the job done, we've qualified, we're in the top 4. They kind of knew straight away. So they knew, here's what we need to do. And they went away and they did it, and they got those results. And I know a couple of times where I was watching them throughout the season, I kind of said that they have the talent. They have a lot of young players, a lot of old players as well inside in that squad that would want to get back in there, would want to be competitive. They wouldn't be happy with finishing 5th or 6th in the league table. They want to go back into 4th. And look, they got there and they got those results. And I suppose that's what you want out of your team at the end of the season. This weekend is probably going to be the biggest game they will have all year. And look, if they don't progress into a final from this weekend, there is the cup that comes in the new year, and they'll definitely be a front runner for that if they can get that momentum that they had at the end of the season, for sure.
Ciaron, I'm not going to ask you about Wicklow because you're completely biased, but talk to us about the top 4 this weekend. First be 4th, second be 3rd. Will they go with home advantage? Will they go with the kind of the higher finishers in the league progressing? Do you see this being a Blackrock Railway potential final, or can Belvo or UL pose a bit of a surprise on Saturday?
Form would suggest it's going to be Railway and Blackrock, to be honest. Probably the Railway Belvedere game, All Belvedere game, is probably going to be more competitive. I think Blackrock will beat UL Bows quite convincingly, if I'm honest. I think Railway will have a slight edge over All Belvedere, but you never know. All Belvedere have some fantastic players. You've got Dana O'Brien playing 10 for them, who's one of the best young talents in Irish rugby. And if she turns up and plays really well, anything can happen. Belvo have an array of talent, but Railway have kind of been the team to beat in Irish women's rugby for probably the last 3 or 4 seasons. So, that would suggest that we're going to see a Railway Blackrock final. And I think it would be fair if it was a Railway Blackrock final, to be fair, because Railway, the only game they lost was against Blackrock. So it would be great to see them go at it again. And just on that point, Dermot was saying about the top 3 was kind of a foregone conclusion. It was really, but the really only positive was that the 4th position, it was really competitive, that you had 3 teams in the mix for it. Because in years gone by, the whole top 4 has been pretty much set in stone the whole way across. So the fact that there was 3 teams in contention going into that last game, I won't mention who was in contention, Breffney, because you might give out to me, but there was 3 teams in contention, which I think is a real positive for the league in general, that is actually happening now. I know there's still a massive gap between the top 3 and the rest, but the fact that 4th gap to 5th and 6th is getting a bit smaller, it is a good thing.
Gearoid, two of those teams that were in the hunt for fourth place ultimately missed out, but they now go into the conference, for want of a better word to describe it. I'm not quite sure what the IRFU are calling it, but the conference semi-finals. They'll go in the same way, ranked 5th and 6th with home advantage. They come in with that bit of form. There is a bit of a gap between 6th and 7th that we've seen so far, although I wouldn't put it past the Etonians to maybe cause a bit of a shock in Galway at the weekend. Are we looking at the same? Are we looking at those two sides being the runaway favourites at the weekend?
I think we are. Wicklow and Weegens definitely will feel, they'll be disappointed that they didn't, as Ciaron said there, that fourth spot looked very competitive between the two of them, and UL came out of nowhere and managed to sneak it on the last day, and they got the results. Wicklow were outstanding this year. I won't take anything from them. They definitely deserved, if they got fourth place, they deserved it. Fifth place definitely for them was phenomenal. Setonians on their day can be a very good team. It's just whether they can get that performance this weekend below in Galway. If they can get that performance, that will definitely put a huge shock into going into that conference final. But Wicklow definitely, for me, look the team to beat out of those four teams. I think they'll convincingly win that semi-final and will get the home advantage in the final. And I've seen what they've got a fairly good home support down there. And if they can get the home support in the final, I think the neutrals would want Wicklow and Weegens in the final. But, I'd say going by the form guide, it looks like those two teams will definitely be the contingent for those for the final places. But I won't knock Setonians. We could see a shock. We've seen it a couple of times this season where teams have gotten results or played really well but mightn't have gotten the win on the day. So, when we saw Setonians earlier on in the season, they did fairly well down in Galway. Can they replicate it is going to be the big question.
One of those people who's going to be supporting in Wicklow at the weekend is yourself, Ciaron. Talk to us about your expectations for the game. Looking forward to it?
Yeah, absolutely, because the first 3 games that I did last year when Wicklow joined the AIL, they shipped like 268 points in the first 3 games, and there was a lot of people saying some negative things. Maybe they shouldn't be in the AIL, maybe they don't deserve to be there. So seeing the way people are talking now and considering them conference favourites, maybe it's amazing. The difference in the club in the last 15 months, it's massive. But I do agree with Dermot. Setonians are obviously the conference defending champions. They won it last year. And, who knows on their day what they can produce. That's the thing about the likes of Setonians, Galwegians and Wicklow. They're all kind of a similar level. So anything can really happen on any day. The one thing is, if Wicklow and Galwegians do make it to a final against each other, that'll be really, really competitive, because I think there was 2 points that separated them when they met down in Galway. So I think that would be a fantastic game next Saturday to kind of top off what should be a really good weekend for women's rugby with the A final on Friday. The only disappointing thing is that some of the girls are away now because with the sevens, and some of them might have been playing for their clubs, this weekend. I know a few girls from a few clubs are out. So that's the only kind of negative, that we won't see them in action. But I think it is a really exciting couple of weekends coming up in women's rugby.
But there's so much rugby coming up in the next few months. With the sevens, we've got the Interpros in January. We have a new look cup / second round of the league after the Interpros. It's a busy time in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the Interpros for the women. You've got the skills coming up, which I love. You've got them in all 4 provinces. Then you've got the Six Nations, the under-20 Six Nations. Like, everything kind of happens at once. There isn't a massive break. After Christmas, you're pretty much into the thick of it pretty fast. So yeah, loads of rugby. Look, I'm not complaining. That's all I do is watch rugby. So.
Fair enough. Well, listen, earlier today, let's wrap up the women's stuff first. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure catching up with you and kind of finding out what's been going on in the women's league. We haven't given it probably as much focus as we would like on the show. It's been busy over the last few weeks. It's been a lot of rugby to be played, so really good to give it a good feature tonight, and the best of luck to all 4 teams in both competitions, the cup or the league, should we say, and the conference semi-finals this weekend. It's going to be an exciting time. That game, of course, all games like 5 o'clock on Saturday evening. Highest ranked teams are at home, and get along to a game. And if you can, just avoid Ciaron because he'll have your ear bent with Wicklow. But now, in terms of that, we'll move on to very quickly to a conversation you had, Ciaron. Do you want to introduce this? You spoke to Gearoid Prendergast. Tell us a bit about this before we started earlier today.
Yeah, I spoke to Gearoid. Obviously, I did the commentary for Trinity Young Munster on Saturday, and that was a massive win for Young Munster. Their second big win in a row because they were the first team to beat Clontarf. They broke Clontarf's 20-game winning streak. So Young Munster have had a massive couple of weeks. Gearoid's a really experienced coach. He's been with coaching in the AIL for 11 seasons now, I think, and he's coached the Ireland clubs as well. And he's the brother of Mike Prendergast, who's attack coach for Munster this season. So Gearoid has a load of experience in the game, and he's great to talk to, and he loves promoting the AIL and talking about it. So I was just really happy to get the opportunity to speak with him.
Here's what you had to talk about earlier today.
And now I'm delighted to be joined by Young Munster head coach Gearoid Prendergast. How are you?
Good, Ciaron. Thank you. And yourself?
All good, all good. I'm sure you're delighted after that big win, 25-24 in College Park last weekend.
Yeah, of course. It was a super win. Left it late, but it was a great win. Listen, they're a top quality side. They've a proven track record. You only have to look at their form this year. Very difficult place to go, so we're thrilled with the win.
I think something that really stood out to me was your set piece. Your set piece was very well drilled, and it made it very hard for Trinity at times.
Yeah, listen, there's credit there to the players, obviously, for implementing it, and then to our forwards coach, Ger Slattery, and we've got help there from Mikey Madden as well. But Ger, in particular, has been there for the last number of years now, doing a brilliant job with them. And yeah, hats off to him and hats off to the lads. Did an excellent job. There was a big line out there at the end, right at the last play, and you saw the quality of our maul as well. Yeah. It was well taken, well spotted by Jack Lyons on the short side, and well finished by Conor Phillips. So, yeah, you're right. The set piece has been a real strength of ours this year so far.
The player that stood out for me was Dan Walsh. I think he's been in tremendous form for you guys the last few weeks. Am I right in saying he tried it over in England for a couple of seasons? He was trying to make it over there.
Yeah, he'd one season there. The years are harder with COVID. It was I think it was just the start of COVID that year, 2020, I think it was. Spent a year there, and then thankfully we were glad to see him come back. Dan is a really quality player. He's a great bloke, but he's a top quality player. Moved into from back row to hooker there a couple of years ago, but can play both. And as you said, he was outstanding last week, as were a number of others. But Dan, Alan Kennedy, these guys, John Foley. I'm slow to name names because just so many of them. But from last Saturday, obviously. But yeah, no, he's a top quality player.
Even that back three you had lining out for you, maybe they didn't get the chances that they would usually get. But Conor Phillips took his at the end. Then you've got the fullback Pat Campbell, who's a player for the future, really, and then you've got the Punisher Conor Hayes on the wing. So you've got a lot of talent in the squad.
There's a huge amount of talent, but you need it in this league. I mean, you only have to look around the other clubs, and they've similar talent. But like the three lads you've mentioned, and Shane McCarthy, they're playing the centre, playing the wing as well, and we've other high quality wingers as well. Jack Harrington's injured at the moment, Pat Ryan's injured, and then there's a number of other players that have. Evan O'Gorman's played earlier in the year. Fionn Gibbons, obviously Dan Goggin came on for us last week as well. Harry Fleming. You look across that back line, Evan Cusack, the half-backs we have, we're lucky. But again, I'll reiterate, you need that level of personnel, that level of quality, because the Tarfs, the Trinities, etc. The Terranures, obviously, they're very strong. So, but yeah, the three lads did very well last week. I thought they played very well.
That's what I was going to ask you next, I suppose. Going back a couple of weeks to that Clontarf win, the first team to beat them in 20 games, I think, in the league. How did that feel for you guys, and what a momentum shifter was it for your season?
Potentially. I mean, I suppose there's a core group there now that have been playing 1A for a number of years now. So we've experienced some real highs and some real lows. We started the season last year brilliantly. If I remember correctly, we won our first 7 games. And then, unfortunately, a number of injuries started kicking in, and then our season dropped a bit. So this year's been the other way, a little bit of the other way around, where we've had some disappointing results. And Tarf was definitely a big win for us. They're a super side. I mean, huge pack. a really experienced back line with some exciting players. So, as you say, to turn them over was fantastic. But it took a lot out of us. It was a big game, and look, we've got to go up there after Christmas, so that's going to be another big challenge. But it's definitely been a bit of a I don't know what the right word is, maybe a bit of a kickstart, and then to follow it on with last week's win has helped with momentum. But look, we're facing into another big challenge the weekend now against an informed Shannon team.
Yeah, you're facing a Shannon team, I suppose, who had a bit of a baptism of fire coming back up to 1A, but Pat O'Connor they're improving with each performance, I think, even if they're not winning all the time. And the 5 o'clock kickoff as well adds an extra bit of spice to the game, you know?
It does. Look, there's a real history in that game. We've had plenty of big local derbies over the last few years, and it's great to have Shannon back up in the division, having those Limerick derbies. Thomond Park, 5 o'clock, and Munster played the night before, so hopefully there'll be a big crowd there, and I know there's a lot of interest in it. And yeah, absolutely, credit to Pat, to Stephen Keogh, and to the rest of the coaching and management team. They've done a fantastic job. They're a young side, but they're a very talented side. So, and they've proven that with the results they've had recently.
And they're a team like yourselves that are very strong in the set piece, very physical. They've got the likes of Kelvin Brown, Lee Nicholas. So do you think it'll be that type of game again where it's kept in tight and a lot of big hits and a lot of emphasis on the scrum and line-out time?
Possibly. I mean, I suppose there was elements of us trying to play even last week as well against Trinity, where there was times where we did get into that kind of high phase game, and when we did, we proved to be quite effective. It's just getting that consistency. And Shannon are well able to do it themselves. I've seen them do it. But but look, it's hard to disagree with you. I mean, the set piece for them is very strong. Their maul is well strong. Their line out very well run. So we'll have to be performing at really high level to match them.
I think you're sitting in 5th at the moment, maybe on 19 points. And last year, I think you finished 6th. And you kind of just missed out, as you said, the injuries kind of cost you later on in the season. You started the season really well. I think you had a massive win over Lansdowne in the Aviva, the actual main Aviva pitch. That was a really standout moment for you guys. But how important is it for you that they keep this momentum going and they don't let it kind of die off?
Well, it's the key, because trying to get into the top 4 is so competitive. And, I suppose a team, no one has mentioned, is Corkán, and you have to take your hat off to them. I mean, they've been very consistent over the last number of weeks, and I know there was a lot of spotlight on them in the last few days because George Coomer had that huge long-range kick up in Ballynahinch, and fair play to them, just give him a mention. It was an incredible kick. But, so you just look at teams like Cons and obviously Terranure, and even Tarf and Trinity, obviously. I know they've had a couple of defeats, but overall they're very consistent teams. Ballynahinch have hit form again this year. Lansdowne are a very strong side, and Shannon are starting to find form. So, yeah, look, it's important, that consistency and that momentum is probably the word I'd use. It's a big thing, because at the same time, while it's a marathon and not a sprint, you definitely need it going. When you turn Christmas and the fixtures turn around, you need that momentum to kick you into the new year. So, look, our eyes are just firmly focused on Shannon out the weekend. It's a big game for us, and then hopefully a win there would lead us nicely into the last game against Terranure.
Well, I was just going to shortly mention that, the Terranure, how good they're doing this season. It's actually amazing, really. You talk about how competitive the league is and how hard it is to get wins, but they're breezing through it, it looks. 7 wins out of 7, all 35 points taken. How impressed have you been by them this season?
Oh, very impressed. I mean, they're a good side. Credit to Sean and to the team there, all the coaching team. They're very well drilled. They know how to win games. They're quite experienced. They play a nice brand of rugby. So yeah, they're ticking a lot of boxes at the moment, and that's again been proven in the results. I mean, it's not tough, as we know. Castle Avenue is not an easy place to go, and to come out of there with a win was very impressive. So yeah, I suppose I haven't really given them much thought now because my eyes are so fixed on Shannon, but that'll be another big game for us before the break.
And I suppose with the way the season goes, you have those 2 games coming up, and then the way it turns around, you have them again in the new year. So it's kind of a block of 4, if you like, almost.
It is. But I suppose I'd refer back to that experience that we have, that we're kind of used to the structure now and how it works. We have a huge game against Corkán in the Senior Cup in between all that, and on the 17th of December we play Corkán in the Senior Cup semi-final at home, and then we have the Christmas break, and then we're back into. We're actually doubling up with the Terranure game on the 14th of January. That's going to be a Bateman Cup semi-final as well as an AIL match, so it'll be a big occasion. But there's loads of rugby to be played before then. But yeah, that turnaround, there's a lot of pluses to it. You're playing a team, and then a few weeks later you're playing them again, and then you work back the other way. So we're used to it, and we've no issue with it. It's a good system.
I suppose for you, what's the goal kind of this season? Is it to make that top 4 and get there this time around?
Yeah, that has to be the ambition. I mean, you look at the time and effort that goes into this from everyone, from players, from coaches, from the club, to compete at this level. It's very demanding. So you're doing it to be the best you can be. And for us, we believe we can make the top 4. We've done it before. We've been, unfortunately, over the years, we've been unlucky in semi-finals, but that's our goal, is to get there. But there's a long way to go. We know it's a big challenge. But I keep going back to the game-by-game approach. And I suppose given the momentum we have now with a big win against like Trinity and Tarf, hopefully that carries us into the remaining games.
Yeah, hopefully. And the last thing I was really going to ask is, am I right in saying Mike Prendergast is your brother?
Yes, absolutely.
So,
I'm known as Mike Prendergast's brother, unfortunately for me.
The attack coach for Munster. How do you think he's got on this season? It's been tough for Munster at times, but do you think they're really starting to kick into gear now?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I mean, obviously the highlight of the last few weeks was the South African game, but even last week getting the win against Connacht in really difficult conditions was very impressive. So yeah, no, he's really enjoying it. Loving his time back here. He's back home. He had a really enjoyable time in France. Of course, he's there with his family, his young kids, and they loved it. And some of his kids were actually born and reared there. So he's had really some fantastic experiences over there, working with an array of world famous players and the likes of Racing and Stad and so on. But he's brought all that experience home now and is thoroughly enjoying it. And listen, there's been a lot said about Munster, but it's going to take time. It's like anything. You look at any top team in any top sport, these transitions, they take time. But you can still see the green shoots are coming through now, and they definitely want to play a particular brand, which I think hopefully will be exciting, and you can again see elements of that. So it's a young squad as well. I think what I'd be most excited about are the young players coming through. Some really talented guys there. So the future's bright, and yeah, it's great. It's great to have them home as well.
I read an article there during the week, because obviously Andy Friend is heading away now. I actually read an article where they said Mike could be a contender for the Connacht job.
Right, okay. No, I haven't seen it and I haven't heard it. And I haven't heard anything about that, but I think his eyes are firmly fixed now on the job at hand, and being as competitive as they can be now this year. And please God, they will be.
And, the thing about the streams is, I suppose, and going back to the game at the weekend, the AIL is such an important part of rugby in this country, grassroots level. And even for yourself, I think you've coached Irish clubs, haven't you? So you've seen a lot of the players throughout the years. How important do you think it is that the AIL gets promoted?
Well, listen, it's vital. I'm hearing that we're going to be streaming our game against Terranure, which is great. And again, like seeing yourselves do it, and I might add, just genuinely really good job last week against Terranure, having the commentary, etc. But look, I'm years saying this. I do in any interview I've ever done. I'm like a broken record talking about the quality that's in the All Ireland League. And if you just look at even a lot of the guys now that are starting to kick through in the pro game, I mean, they've had plenty of All Ireland League experience. I was listening to an interview from Stuart Lancaster yesterday, and he started naming off young players' names in Leinster, and all of them have been playing regular AIL. You look at someone like Jack Crowley now kicking through in Munster, a really exciting talent. But again, had the AIL experience. Joey Carberry, go back to years with Clontarf. So you can
Patrick Campbell too, and young Munster is.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, our own guys now, like Pa and all these guys, and Conor Phillips has played this year, and Owen O'Connor. So, and then you look at the Keenans and the Joshes and the Gavin Coombs, the Finney's, all those guys, Dan Goggin, Calvin, and again all the other clubs players. So, I suppose the point I'm making is that it's such an important platform for the pro game, but equally, it provides an opportunity for guys that won't play pro to play rugby at a very high level. Not everyone makes it as a pro, as we know. It's very challenging. The numbers are quite small that actually do go through. So even in the academies, it's quite challenging. So, if the pro game isn't for you and you don't get there, it's certainly the next best thing. And you can just see in the last couple of years, I'm involved a long time in it. The crowds are really starting to come back. The interest is there. There's a lot more buzz around the AIL, and it's just great to see onwards and upwards with it, really.
It's funny you say that, because after Conor Phillips went in the corner, there was a big roar from one of the crowd. He goes, "Go on, Munsters!" And it just made me smile. that passion that he had, you could hear it in his voice.
Yeah. And it was, I suppose, look, it was reflected in when we came off the pitch. You could see it in the supporters' faces, and I'd say again, like Saturday now in Thomond Park. I know it's a huge stadium, but I'd expect to be a big crowd there. We played Garryowen local derby earlier in the year. I think there was well over 2,000 people there. So, and you see some of the crowds in the Dublin games as well. Huge crowds. Looking at Terranure and Tarf there last week, Castle Avenue looked fairly full. So, it's a really high standard. And these guys, in fairness to the club, to the players, they're giving up a huge amount of time and sacrifice to play rugby at this level.
Absolutely, and I wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season, and hopefully you guys can make the top 4.
Thanks, Ciaron. Appreciate it.
And that was a great interview there with Gearoid earlier. He seemed fairly happy with the week or the fortnight even he's had.
Yeah, well, when you're the first team to beat the champions Clontarf in 20 games, and then you go to College Park, I don't know when the last time they lost in College Park was. So to do that back to back, it's two teams that are in the top 3 of the league. Like it's massive.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick look at that Division 1A table today as it stands, and you see that young Munster have been bumping up themselves up the table. They're currently in 5th place. Very impressive from Terranure, though. They're the team to beat 5 points from 7 games, 35 total, and a nice little gap themselves at the top of the table. In terms of the actual results from last weekend, Shannon beat UCD 36-24. Ballynahinch went down 20-13 to Cork Con, while Terranure had that win against Clontarf in Castle Road, 24-29, the final score there. Dublin University 24, Young Munster 25. That late winner for Young Munster, great result for them. And Lansdowne 47, Garryowen 28. A very one-sided game in the Aviva Stadium. So it's been an interesting kind of week. Your thoughts? What was your highlight of the week?
I suppose the fact that Terranure beat Clontarf in Clontarf, it shouldn't go unnoticed. I think, that was the final last year, and on that day, Clontarf came out on top. But it's more the thing that nobody's got close to even beating Terranure. Like, there hasn't even been a moment where you go, "Oh, somebody could get them here," or "Oh, they might lose here." It literally just hasn't happened. Like, they've taken 35 points out of 35, and they've done it pretty easily. Like, it's worrying. Like, unless something happens to them in the second half of the season, like, unless they somehow lose a rake of players or something, or they just have a really bad run of form, I really can't see anyone beating them just the way they're playing. They're a well-oiled machine at this point.
Trinity this weekend, can they pull it off?
Trinity have a massive 2 weeks coming up. They have Terranure away, and then they have Cork Con at home. So massive 2 games coming up. It would be a massive statement from Tony Smith's side to beat Terranure in Terranure, and it would get them right back on track. But to be honest, Lakelands is a very tough place to go and get a result. Most of the teams that have went to Lakelands this season, they've been put to the sword. I don't think Trinity will be put to the sword as much because Trinity are a very good side. I think it will be a very competitive game, and who knows what can happen on the day, but you'd have to go for Terranure. Like, just the way they're playing this season, like, it's hard to bet against them in any kind of week or any kind of game.
They're your tip for the league?
They have to be.
Okay. And moving on to Division 1B, of course, Banbridge 35, Naas 20, City of Armagh 31, Old Belvedere 20, Malone 20, Highfield 17, St Mary's College 9, Buccaneers 23, UCC 15, Old Wesley 25. What strikes you there as kind of the big results of the weekend? I suppose Buccaneers got to be looking at them at the top of the table.
Yeah, Bucks 6. I think they're 6 from their last 6 games. They've won now. And they're at top of the table, and they're looking really, really good at this level, The other thing was the 2 teams at the bottom, Malone and Banbridge, got 2 much-needed victories at the weekend, so massive for them. The one thing, though, that's striking me at the moment, UCC, if I'm correct, have lost their last 3 games, and they won their first 4, so they're on a really kind of serious decline, it looks like, and probably not something they anticipated when they started so well. So Michael Bradley will be keen to fix that as soon as possible.
Yeah, of course, they got beaten at home by Old Wesley last week, and it put Wesley level with them when it could have been an opportunity to put 10 points between them and put themselves back into the top 2 or 3 spots. Are they in danger of missing out maybe on a playoff run here?
I think UCC, they're just going through a blip in form. I don't really know what it is, to be honest, because I don't really know anyone in UCC, but from going, they obviously came down from 1A and then they started life in 1B pretty well, like won 4 from 4. And I think they've lost their last 3 games, which is quite strange. Like, sometimes in 1B, because it's so competitive, you can have a team wins one week and then loses by a couple the next week, and it kind of goes like that for a while. But yeah, I'm pretty surprised by their recent results. And another team that are probably the dark horses, to be honest with you, is City of Armagh. I think they've been really good from home this season. I think they've been flawless from home, and they're sitting second in the table now, if I'm correct. So, like, for them to be there, I think they could be serious dark horses. They're a team with a lot of talent, I know. And who knows? Belvedere need a win this weekend. They're at home to Malone, and that's a massive kind of bottom of the table clash. And I was very surprised by Naas losing to Banbridge, to be honest, as well, during last weekend.
Yeah, it's all getting very, very tight. We're going to see that in a couple of other divisions further on in our roundup as well. Division 2A, Ballymena, a big win, 16 points to spare, 26-10 over Dolphin. Cashel with 6 points over Old Crescent, 14-8. MU Barnhall, 32. Navan, 12. Nina Ormond, 32. Queen's University, 24. Just missed out on a losing bonus point there. While Blackrock College had a good win down in UL Bowes, 26-31, the final score there. Anything strike you from that division? 2A is it's one of those that's getting really, really tight if we look at the league table.
Yeah, well, just the fact that Queen's University are slipping down a little bit, they were obviously very dominant last season, as we say most weeks, and they looked pretty dominant at the start of this season, but they'll be looking to climb back up. Blackrock College only came up from 2B this season, and to be top of 2A, they'll be loving life. And then you've got Cashel up there as well. I think, are they the team playing Blackrock? Or no, it's Nina, is it, playing Blackrock this weekend? But yeah, I mean, it's a very competitive division, and to see Blackrock up there top is quite surprising, and UL Bowes at the bottom. Not many people would have said that at the start of the season.
Yeah, of course. Cashel, they do have a game. They travel to Queen's University for that second versus third position. So it's a chance for one of them to really stake a claim for a chance to get into that challenge, I suppose, with Blackrock for the league title at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. 2A seems really competitive. And to be honest, with the way it runs in with Christmas, you have the 2 games and then you have the reverse fixtures straight after Christmas. So it's quite interesting. I consider these games like a block of 4 almost. You've got the home and the away with the 2 teams. So this is a really important block. And I always think whoever can come out of this block well, can really push on then for the rest of the season. So the next 4 games across all the divisions is really important.
Yeah, it's tough. It's you see the likes of UCC with big games coming up, and they got to push on, but then they face the same teams again just after Christmas. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But at least they'll be out of the way and they'll be able to mount a proper challenge. 2B, again, another one where the bottom side's struggling, but they've managed to come out of that. If we look at the actual fixtures there, sorry, I dropped them off. Belfast Harlequins beaten 10-15 by Dungannon. Greystones with a tight victory over Galwegians. Galway Corinthians win on the road 26-20 at Malahide. Wanderers 21-14 against Rainy Old Boys, and Sligo 17-10 against Enniscorthy. Losing bonus points in all 5 games, and the tightness of the league really compounded then on the actual table itself. When we look at that, with only 10 points separating second and 8th, 5 points separating third and 8th. In theory, Malahide or Sligo or Rainy Old Boys could actually be in third place at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's a really tight division, as you said. A couple of results here or there could completely kind of flip it over. Greystones, to be fair, 7 out of 7. They're looking really, really good. I think they were in a similar enough position this time last season as well. And obviously things are probably going to benefit them a bit more this time around, because if you finish first, you will go up, I think. Is what it's going to be this year, like it was in previous years, and then they changed it because of COVID. So Greystones will want to keep doing what they're doing. Then, as you said, the competition for those top 4 places, you've got Belfast Harlequins in there, you've got Rainy Old Boys in there, you've got Wanderers in there. Like, it's really, really competitive. Corinthians have looked really, really good this season. Galwegians to only lose by 2 points against Greystones. I know they had home advantage, but even I was thinking, that's a good result for them, considering how things have been going. Sligo got a really important win over Enniscorthy, kind of bottom half of the table, must win for both. Enniscorthy just haven't really got going in 2B yet. Who knows what can happen in the second half of the season for them. But yeah, it's a really competitive division, and I think those top 4 spots, they're going to be still open come even the last game of the season, like with a few teams in the mix.
Yeah, for me, Galway Corinthians and Belfast Harlequins probably the game of the weekend in terms of the impact it's going to have on those top few positions, and particularly in that playoff or that chase of Greystones at the top of the table. Division 2C, Clonmel beaten 14 points to 28 by the all-conquering Estonians. Their 7th bonus point victory. Ballina, Middleton, 13 points apiece. Oma Academicals, 13-14 against Bangor. Sunday's Well beaten 10-3 by Bruff. And Tullamore, they beat Skerries 18-16 at home. Estonians, we've talked about them every week on the show. It's almost getting like I feel like I'm a broken record this week, but can they go the whole season like this? We're seeing so many divisions where the new boys, the team that only come up to that grade, have just blown everybody away.
Yeah, well, they're on a similar kind of trajectory as Terranure, taking all 35 points that are available. Nobody's really got close to them. They're kind of just running away with it. I think from Twitter, I can see that the atmosphere in the club is really good at the moment. I suppose when you're winning all the time, of course, it's going to be. And then you've got a really competitive kind of battle for those top 4 spots. You've got Tullamore in there. You've got Skerries in there. But Estonians, look, if you had a fiver and you said, will Estonians go up or win the league, you'd have to say probably, yeah, with the way they're going. And to go up from junior rugby, I say it every week, but to go from junior rugby then to 2C straight up to 2B is a massive achievement, really.
Mairead talked earlier about the structures in the women's game and kind of the changing of the league format from year to year doesn't really help get that kind of settled feel, in her opinion. Are we looking at maybe the year or two affected by COVID where teams didn't move up and down based on results shown in the league tables with the likes of Buccaneers, the likes of Blackrock College and Estonians, even Ballina and UCC to a lesser extent on the downward trajectory, for want of a better word, and that's probably a bit harsh on UCC, but we're seeing teams dropping down and going straight to the bottom of the table or coming up and going straight to the top of the table. Do we need to maybe look at some sort of a system where we can restructure and regrade teams, or are we just wait and let teams get through the system as they normally would?
I think just keep going the way you're going, and then, because I think with COVID, there's been a lot of teams that have been lucky and then a lot of teams that have been unlucky. You've got Old Wesley in 1B that really probably should be a 1A side, but they're not because of the way things fell with COVID. And then you've got Greystones as well, probably should be a 2A side, but they're not because of COVID. And then you've got some other teams where luck has probably went their way. They finished bottom, and maybe they're not finishing bottom at the minute and they're doing mid-table, but in regular seasons they would have went down and maybe things would have been different. They would have lost certain players and maybe they would have been going completely downhill. So I think there was positives and negatives to it, depending on what kind of end of the spectrum you were on. But I think it is different with the women's though, because first of all, there isn't as many clubs, and also a lot of the, I wouldn't say top talent, but a lot of the Irish internationals or the Leinster players, they do end up going to one of the big 3 in Dublin, whether it be Railway, Blackrock and Belvedere. That's just the way it is. I think that's the big difference. Whereas in the AIL with the men's, you've got plenty of clubs to go to, and then underneath that, you've got really good junior club leagues as well, that it can be really competitive and a really good level. So I think the league's all right. I know years ago there was no such thing as 2C. I know it was 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and then 2C kind of came in. They split 2B, I think, and they made 2C out of that. But I think it is good to have the 5 divisions. I think just keep going the way they're going, really. I think the top team should go up straight away, to be honest. I think if you've been consistently good over a period, you should be going up. And that's the only real thing that was bad about COVID, that certain teams, the Greystones, the Wesleys, the Queens, that probably should have went up. I know in Enniscorthy's case, they finished top and they did end up going up. So it didn't matter to them. But for the other kind of 3 teams where they dominated the league for large parts and didn't go up, you'd have to feel for them.
Absolutely. Well, listen, that's pretty much it for this week. We're about to hit the hour mark. We don't like going over that 60 minutes because I know most of you don't hang around as long as we would like to keep talking. But we are a phenomenal weekend's actually the second last penultimate round of games in the men's league this side of Christmas. But more importantly, it is a semi-finals of the women's competition and some absolutely mouth-watering clashes to be had on Saturday. We'll, of course, have full updates and score checks on all of those games on Saturday, as usual, on finalwhistle.ie. If you just click into Rugby and look at live scores, wherever you happen to be, you'll get those results as they happen in real time across the entire league. Ciaron, thanks again for joining me.
No worries, Murphy.
A pleasure as always, and to Mairead, Gearoid, and of course Dermot, who joined us earlier in the show as well. Great to be just chatting rugby, just chatting about sport in general over the last hour or so. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with you again next week for another episode of the Rugby Show here on finalwhistle.ie. We'll chat to you over the weekend across our socials with all the updates from the games. Talk to you then.